Okay, so thank you everyone who joined us today for coming to this collaborative session on assessing community and user needs in public libraries. I want to thank also Andrew and Ines for inviting me from EBLIDA to invite me to facilitate this session. So a few words about me and about my work. So I'm Lola, I'm network coordinator at ENVITA, which is a French network of local and regional governments. We are advocating for unconditional welcoming and inclusion of migrant people in French policies. And we bring a network of 90 local and regional governments, also 60 elected officials, and together we are trying to build a more inclusive and open, human-centered local policies. So our main work at ENVITA is to animate our network of local governments, and then we also try to provide tools for making more inclusive policies. And also, we do a lot of advocacy around national and international, at the national level and international level, to bring more awareness on migrant people needs and to try to advocate for better reception policies. So we came to work closely with libraries starting in 2024. Because we started working on a library project alongside EBLIDA that is hosting this webinar today. First, our association was mainly working directly with municipalities, but because of the library project, we came to work closely with libraries because the project is centered around improving migrant people reception and inclusion in public libraries. So this project is a European project with 5 other countries, but we also lead it nationally. So in France, 12 cities joined us to be part of this project, as well as their 12 municipal libraries. And together we led 12 local need assessments this year that we conducted this year. And it was our first time working closely with libraries and doing need assessment for libraries. After the local need assessment, we constructed a local action plan based on the assessment and on local workshop that we conducted. So that's why also EBLIDA invited me to talk about a bit about this experience and the way we have done a local assessment. So I'm very happy today to be presenting this session and to share a little bit of the methods, maybe the lessons that we have learned along the way, and also to hear from you what you have seen in your libraries and what you have gathered from maybe if you have done local assessments before. So hopefully by the end of this collaborative session, we hope that you would have gotten a more understanding view of principles and methods of doing an assessment need. We also hope that you will get some inspiration from real-world example from your peer here, and also maybe get more concrete ideas and find some next steps that you want to implement in your libraries. I'll share with you also the agenda for today. So after this introduction, I'll let Andrew speak and set the scene. And then I'll present to you methods and tools for the assessment of needs. And then we'll have a small group discussion on questions so you can share with European peers your opinion and your experience on this subject. Then we'll go back to the plenary session and get feedback from your group discussion. And then we'll start doing an action plan to see what we can do next. Okay. I'll let Andrew speak for setting the scene.
Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be with you. My name is Andrew Cranfield. I'm the EBLIDA director, and I'm just going to use the next 5-6 minutes for to setting the scene. And before joining EBLIDA as director at the start of the year, I worked for some years as a library director in Denmark, and most recently with a project which was very much about community engagement and assessing the needs of the community. So I'll say a little bit about that as well. But firstly, maybe a couple of quotes to get us going and thinking for today. The first one is from David Lankus, who I think could be very much the sort of intellectual godfather of the libraries at the moment. And and this, I think, is such a great great statement. I think it's quite old, and it's certainly one that's been used before, but I think it's worth remembering that bad libraries build collections, good libraries build services, and great libraries build communities. And that, in a very simple two-liner, I think says a lot about what libraries are today and what they're becoming and what they should be. Then there's from an ALA presidential initiative speech, Sari Feldman. When libraries engage deeply with their communities, they become not just relevant, but essential to the social and economic health of the people they serve. And in a time where organizations such as the one that I lead are lobbying for libraries as essential services, it's very important that we see that we are at the heart of community growth and community engagement, and not just a collection of materials. And then Michael Gorman says that libraries must be seen as community institutions shaped by and responsive to the people they serve, not merely storehouses of information. Again, this underlining that when we engage and talk to our communities, we build much stronger libraries. And I think this is true actually for all cultural institutions, that the more that they can engage and understand those that they serve, become less elitist. We often talk about that our libraries are open for all, and the door is always open, and there's a low barrier in some ways. I think sometimes we underestimate that for many, coming into a library is not a natural place for them to be. It's a place of learning, knowledge, and so forth. And if you have if you have trouble reading or so forth, then it can be a difficult institution to navigate towards. And how do we engage? And Lola will say a lot more about this, but it is through terms or concepts such as co-creation, design thinking, and social innovation. And one of the things, having worked with some of these methodologies for some years, that I have discovered, not just the fact that we often maybe lack the competencies in libraries, and that's something we will hopefully be able to not solve today, but at least have some bricks in place to go forward. But often it's also about that those we wish to engage with also maybe lack the tools and the language to co-create or to social innovate with us. So for me, it's always been very much a two-way street, that we as institutions have to do this, but we also have to make sure that those communities that we would like to engage are interested and have the possibility to do that. And often it really, before you go into the community, you also need to find out how best to give the community those tools to engage. So it's very much a two-way street. This was the project that I mentioned before, where I was the library director in Elsinore. We got a very large grant from the ministry to look at and to seek ways to engage in local communities, and not least in the villages that were, this was a consortium of 5 or 6 municipalities. So to look at life in the villages, that is the rural areas around the larger cities that the libraries were often placed in. Most research shows that if you are more than 3 to 5 kilometers away from a public library, your usage of that library will fall significantly. So realizing that we cannot build small libraries in every single village, how can we become more visible and present libraries outside of the physical buildings, which I think is really, really important, that we don't think of libraries necessarily as buildings, but as services and of places for dialogue and outreach. As I say, this was financed by the Danish Agency for Culture and Palaces, which is under the ministry. It focuses on strengthening cohesion in smaller village communities through cultural and meaningful activities. Another goal is to make the library more accessible to citizens who live far away from a physical library. And this was a joint effort by several libraries. And for those of you who maybe are not that familiar with Danish geography, Brønderslev, Slagelse, Hillerød, Vejle, and Helsingør are 5 smaller than Copenhagen, certainly cities in Denmark, and spread geographically across the country. Through experimentation and citizen involvement, as well as collaboration with local actors, the aim is to find effective methods of cultural dissemination without constructing new library buildings. So a fairly clear concept of what had to be done. I have to say, in Elsinore, we also were working a lot on the sustainability agenda, which also had a strong community outreach perspective to it. And we saw that that was also one of the ways that we could use information, knowledge, when we talk about sustainability, the development goals and so forth, that this was a very good tool to engage the community in different activities. So this was to support cultural offers in villages where distance to physical library is large, experiment with pilot approaches in cooperation with citizens association and local partners. Denmark is a country with an awful lot of citizen associations. It can be for stamp collectors, for sports activities, for book clubs and so forth. So often there is a very strong groupings of citizens in various associations, and this was obviously one of the partners that we could engage with, and often we found that this was something that the associations were very, very keen on, because they also can be maybe slightly isolated, and having a partner which is also part of the municipality is quite a strong person or a strong institution to have working with you. And then, of course, this was also to connect knowledge about which methods work best to maintain cultural participation in small communities. Like all of these projects, a lot of the value of it is to disseminate to other libraries and to have methodologies and toolboxes and so forth in how one can do this. We realized quite quickly that even in a small country like Denmark, the municipalities are different, the groupings are different, and the way that you can engage are very, very different. So you always have to realize that a one size fits all usually does not work. You have to tailor this to the societies that you are in and the municipalities that you know and serve. So in conclusion, and again, this is just setting the scene for the discussion, I think for me, the idea of cultural by the people, not for the people, something that I said so often that I think my colleagues were tiring slightly of it, is really, really important. The age of when we have cultural production, cultural artifacts, and that could be books, paintings, theatre, and so forth, that we present for the people. We can still do that, of course, but it's also incredibly important that we curate the culture with the people and by the people. Engagement and curiosity, I think this is a really, really important skill for librarians and staff working in libraries, a true engagement and curiosity of what your public wants. We had a great 2-day session last week in The Hague on peer learning on inclusion and on inclusion and how we can include citizens in what we do. And certainly a number of our colleagues raised the question of the mindset and the conservatism of librarians, so that it's not a barrier necessary of policy and strategy, but also maybe a barrier of those working in libraries, that we're used to doing it in one way, and therefore it can be difficult to do it in another way. And that, of course, needs strategic initiatives within the libraries themselves. And then we have the multiple role of libraries, that there are so many issues, sustainability, health, democracy, where libraries can play a role, and therefore this engagement is, I wouldn't say easier, but there are certain, it's not based any longer on collections, but as much on societal issues and challenges, and therefore maybe easier to engage at all levels. And sometimes, and this is something that I think is so important, just do it. If you spend a year planning how to engage with the community, maybe your timing is a bit off. And sometimes you just have to set initiatives in motion, really not knowing whether they will work or not. And I'm sure anybody who's worked in a public library, especially a smaller public library, has put a lot of planning into activities, and 2 people turn up, and that's not great. But sometimes we just have to do this because there's a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of information that we learn from doing these things. And what does not work is often as important as what works in a learning perspective. So back to you, Lola, and looking forward to finding out how to really do this properly.
Thank you, Andrew. I'll share back my screen. So now let's move on into the methodology part of this session, and let's try to understand the methods and tools for assessing community needs. So the goal of this session is to explore the different methods and tools that you may or may not be already familiar with, and to understand how it can be applied to public libraries, and how we can serve the community, and also to share some examples from my practice and my colleague practice in the library project. So the first thing we need to ask ourselves before doing the assessment need is how to frame it. What are we trying to understand? What are we trying to clarify? What do we want to improve? So assessing community needs can be asking the question, who is using the library, who isn't, what barrier exists to access, to participate in the activities and the services. Maybe it can be a broader question, like how can the library support inclusion, learning, well-being of its users and non-users, and also a broader question such as how are users and non-users looking for in a library. These are just some examples that can help guide how we're gonna be a common thread for the assessment of needs. I also wanted to highlight the importance of the user and staff relationship, that you're already probably aware of it, but beyond the formal tools and methods that we can apply on specific times, everyday communication with users is also a valuable form of assessment. Each question at the desk, each conversation after an event, each informal comment can be a piece of feedback that can be valuable and help understand maybe what are people looking for in the library, and how we can maybe adapt the activities and services to their needs. And trying to be mindful of the comments and the suggestion can help also build a common dialogue and build trust among the users. For which I'm going to present you the 2 methods, qualitative and quantitative, and different tools such as survey, interviews, and as to which method to choose, it really depends, of course, on your resources, the time, the effort, the human resources that you have, and the goals, the question you want to answer. Maybe some questions are more about numerical data, and some questions are more about qualitative answers. So it depends on that. But the ideal method, of course, is combining quantitative and qualitative methods with, of course, the addition of those daily insights that you're already maybe collecting. Let's start with the quantitative methods. So this approach, as the word say, quantitative, it's around data, around numbers, and it's often structured and covered a large number of individual respondents. And it is mostly useful to measure phenomena and maybe understand links between different factors. The data can show us how many, how often, or to what extent people do something, use something. And some tools of these methods can be surveys, surveys with predefined answers, multiple choice, or rating scales. And in practice, those surveys can help us understand who is using the library, how often they visit, what service they value, what barriers prevent them from using the services. Another tool can be experiment or pilots that can be used to test maybe an idea of a new services or a communication strategy. And you can also do data analysis using the data you already collect, maybe about the number of entry, the attendance, or you can use broader statistic, maybe to know better your town population, demographic databases, etc. And the positive side of the quantitative method is that you can measure, compare, and scale the different numbers, the different data you're studying. And it's also helpful to track trends and to report back to policymaker. It's more on like efficient based. Is this service useful? Well, a lot of people are using it, then yes. But as much as it can be useful to measure and track, the negative side is that numbers alone don't explain why people act or use these services or why they don't. So it doesn't help to understand the context or to nuance the numbers. During the library project, on the quantitative methods side, we use mainly surveys directed to third country national, so migrant people from outside the EU. And this helped us understand how they see the library, who are the people going to the library, what are the language they speak, what are the reasons of their visits, do they think the library is a welcoming spaces? Because that's what the question we wanted to answer through the local need assessment. And we also did data analysis because we did those local need assessment on 12 different territories. So we needed to get to know the territories much deeper than the general knowledge we have of it, to understand the migration statistics, etc., to better put in perspective the numbers and the information we're getting from the library. So that's it for the quantitative methods. And the qualitative methods, so as I say, qualitative, this approach is more around speech, around experiences, emotion, stories that we can gather through less structured material. With often, of course, a smaller number of participants. And this can help us understand why and how people engage with the library or don't engage with the library. So, of course, for the qualitative methods, we can do interviews, small interviews one by one or with a group, semi-directed or directed. We recommend and Vita will recommend more semi-directed interviews with a few guiding questions for the interview, but also leaving space for what people have to share and bring on this subject. You can also do surveys with open-ended questions that can be useful. You can do focus group with users, non-users, but also with library staff. And this can be valuable when you want to test an idea or hear how different groups react to each other's perspective. But the focus group, just a little point of attention on this is that often the staff needs to be trained for this session of focus group, because it's really important that everyone feels comfortable during the session to share, and that no one speak more than the other, and to make a real safe space. Another tool that can be used is observation. You can have more structured observation with by tracking a specific data. For example, how many people use a specific area, how long they stay, or more of an unstructured observation by simply looking at how people use the library, where people sit, maybe how people use, if you have a children's area, how people use that. And for the observation, you can use tools such as foot traffic counters or heat maps to locate the busiest area of the library, to see which places are the most used and which aren't. Another tool that can be useful is community mapping, because as Andrew said before, the library is not just an institution by itself, it's also linked to a network of association, other institutions, municipal services. So it could be good to try to collect and make a visual representation of the network that the library is built into, and the spaces that makes up this community. And it can help identify what already exists and what maybe what opportunity is there to open. And this also, the community mapping can also be done with users to understand also how they see the territory, how they see, how they use the services that exist, and understand their habits and the space they value the most. So the important part of the qualitative method is that it helps us provide deep insight into context, habits, and realities that we cannot get from numbers. And it can also capture more relationship between users, how to build the links they create. And the negative side of this method is that of course, it is time consuming, and it needs human resources, because it's interviews, it's preparing sessions. For the library project, the two things we mostly did was observation. So since our target was migrant people, we went to language cafe or conversation workshop and because that's where mostly what services they use in the library. And we tried to see and notice how they interacted with each other, or the library staff was preparing this time, and what barriers seems to emerge in the reality of the session. We also, of course, led interviews with municipal staff, library staff, but also with local associations that were working with migrant people, because we wanted to get a full picture of how each of those people saw the role of the library, and how they interacted with it, if they had connection with it already, and what they thought the library could be. And in parallel of this, also librarians noted during the whole project small recurring feedback to try to implement little by little. For example, a request for multilingual signage was made, and so we try to think of how it could be implemented. So that's it for the overview of the method. I hope it was not too quick. And now I'm going to share with you some practical tips that we have gathered through our short but quite intense experiences. As I say, the beginning must be around framing and starting with a clear question on where you want this to go, where this is going to end to. Also, I would recommend to use, of course, existing data. You might already have a lot of data from the library, and of course, to try to use and reflect on the data you already have, so it's not too heavy on work. Of course, we recommend to partner with local stakeholders that can help bring a different perspective on the library role, and also bring the perspective of the people they support that maybe don't go to the library yet. As I say also before, what is really important is also to integrate assessment into everyday practice and use a small feedback and try to collect it, try to have a time to reflect on the feedback you get. And the last and not least for us, especially because we were trying to think around how to make library more welcoming spaces for migrant people. For us, it was very important to be as inclusive as possible in this assessment need, in the communication around it. So for example, for surveys, we try to make sure to be as inclusive as possible. So because not everybody is comfortable with online, with answering online surveys, we try to offer the printed versions. And because not, especially migrant people, may not speak our language, we also did in the survey in the languages that were most spoke on the territory. What we would also recommend is that maybe you can have volunteers or staff to help fill out the survey, because not everybody is comfortable with writing or reading. And so it really helped us. We would go to, after the language cafe, we would go around and pass the survey, the written survey, and help people read and answer the question. And it was quite helpful to get more answers and to promote the survey and push a little bit the people to answer, because they're not necessarily comfortable by themselves to go forward to us. So as a summary, as I said before, both methods can be combined, and it's better to draw a clearer picture of what users and non-users need, and also to understand how they behave in the library. Because the survey can give us numbers, the interviews, they give us stories and point of views. The observation help notice behaviors. The community collaborative mapping can give us context and habits. And so all of this together can give a complete picture of users' needs and wishes for the library. So together they form like a kit that can empower the library to listen, adapt, and also co-create with their users. So I just wanted to finish by adding that assessing needs is not only about gathering data, of course, it's about listening, building relationship. So as I said before, it's really important. The everyday conversation is important, but also the links with other institutions, with other stakeholders. And all of this can help us reach people that don't yet use a library, and can give maybe a better sense of the broader needs in the area in terms of access to reading, to culture, to rights, to a safe place. And the relationship also reminds us that the library is part of a wider network, as Andrew said, working for inclusion, learning, well-being in the city. And by keeping this dialogue open with users and partners, library can stay close to real life and adjust their services. After this big methodology part, we're gonna try to split you up in small group discussions. You'll have 25 minutes to discuss with your peers about the subject of this session, local assessment needs. Maybe reflect on the data you currently collect, if you do. If you have done need assessment before, that would be great to share how it went out and what challenges did you face. And also, we're really interested in finding the impact and the success that you may have encountered through this need assessment. So yeah, we're gonna try to split you up in small groups, and
Okay.
after that we'll go back to plenary session.
Thank you, Lola, and thank you very much for facilitating today. It was really interesting to get a little bit of insight into the methodologies that we can use. And of course, I know that we're just scratching on the surface here today, but I think it was very useful to have this short introduction and the discussions following this. And as I said, I realized that we have not had that much time. I think one of the things that strikes me is that we're all either engaged or thinking of engaging in how to talk to our communities. There is a realization, I would think, among all of us that this is not easy to do. It requires a lot of thinking. It requires a lot of manual and human input, and especially when we think of the more qualitative methods of talking to people, interviews, focus groups. This all takes a lot of time, and I think, as you said, Kirela, or stress the importance of feedback to those that we have talked to, because there's nothing worse in being asked a lot of questions and giving your input, and then never really seeing the results of this, which also means, of course, we have to be fairly structured and thoughtful about what questions and what type of questions we ask. I think we've all seen a lot of reports which have asked a lot of user questions and talked to users, but how then we frankly translate that into policy can be really, really difficult. I think also when we talk about needs assessment and in community engagement, there's a very realization, there's the realization that this is very much an ongoing process. It has to be embedded in the strategy, and asking our users once every 3 years what they think is not really what I think community engagement is about. So this is a sort of continuous process. It's an iterative process where we all the time have to engage, ask, go back, see if this works, engage, and so forth. And again, it's a lot of work, but I think that we will get the libraries that we deserve and that our communities deserve. And I think, again, Camilla, you mentioned this, there's a community of users and there's a community of librarians, and these in some way have to come together and qualify each other. I think this also leads into a whole question of skills development within the sector. I'm not, I think, the first person to say and to realize that the library schools and the library educations are either changing or disappearing, and certainly the most of those staff that I have and professionals that I've employed over the last 5 or 6 years have not had a library degree. They have come from other disciplines. That could be data science, it could be literature, it could be really media science, lots of areas. And I think that plethora of skills and professions that we have in the library is really important also for how we can go forward when thinking about community engagement, because we need a lot of different skills. We definitely need social and relational skills. How do we talk to users? How do we really get the information we need? So I think there's also a big question there that the profession also has to not change necessarily, but adapt to some new agendas. I think that's a very, very quick wrap up. Again, it's been great to talking to everybody, and hopefully this just gives us a little bit of incentive to go back, talk to our users, talk to our colleagues, talk to our associations about the importance of how we do this, and the recent European project LibreRin, which some of you may have heard of. And we can maybe send out to users the links to that project, because I think there's a lot of useful information on social innovation in libraries and how to put this into practice, which might be worth reading. So thank you very much for coming today, and I just give the last word to you, Lola.
Well, I just want to say thank you for coming all, and thank you for inviting me to this webinar. Have a good day.
Thank you.